I was watching one of Aeon's videos that was going over some good beginner extremes for people who were starting to play Extreme Demons, which was a pretty good video, I have to admit, with some great levels that I would have picked as well. But then I realized that this video, along with all the other videos that people have made along the same topic of your first extreme or doing beginner extremes, they have a bit of a flaw to them. So let's say someone does watch one of these videos and they want to get good at GD and start beating extreme demons, but they run into a problem, and that is that they don't like any of the levels mentioned and they don't really want to play those ones. Now, this means the video was 1, just no help at all to this player, and 2, they're still without an extreme demon to play. So that's where this video comes in. Instead of making a video recommendation for certain extremes to play, I'm going to list some criteria for finding a good starter extreme, and for you to know if the level you might be thinking of playing as a good beginner extreme to do is actually a good beginner extreme or first extreme to do. Or if it ends up, or you'll find out if it's a bit too hard for you. I do want to say 2 things before we start. The first thing is that I'm not going to be talking about platform extremes, as while I do have over 20 extreme demons completed, my hardest platformer level is only an insane demon, so I'm not really qualified to talk about platformers. If you do really want my thoughts on that, then I think you can just really play any platformer extreme you want as long as it's not a big jump in difficulty, since beating platformers might take a lot of time, but they can be done pretty easily if you're playing for a long session. And second of all, this video is made for people who want to improve and eventually beat levels above beginner extremes and beyond. If you just want to beat an easy extreme as your first extreme and not continue with the game skill-wise, either beat Acu or do whatever level that has the most amount of gameplay that matches your best skill set. That's my recommendation for you. But for you all that do want to improve, this is how you find a beginner extreme to play. First of all, we need to look at your level's length. My recommendation is that the level you want to go for should be over 1 minute 15 seconds in length and under 3 minutes. You want it in between that range. This is because short extremes, to make up for their short length, usually have a much harder gameplay than the average extreme around this difficulty. And the opposite can also be said for long extremes, as since their difficulty comes from more nerve control, they tend to have easier gameplay. Now, if you're wanting to improve at the game, playing long extremes is not a good option, as you don't gain much skill from them at all, and all you gain is nerve control. But by playing levels in the range I just mentioned, you're able to play extremes that are not just difficult enough for you to gain skill from them, but also long enough for you to have a lot of nerves when playing them, which is great practice for when you want to go on to harder levels, or want to take a shot at an actually real long level in the future, like the Lost Existence, Dark Odyssey, Boogie, and anything along that range. Next up is gameplay. You want to pick a level that's actually fun to play, because if you're playing beginner extremes that are unfun, then it'll just make you dislike extremes a lot more, and it'll overall just affect your drive to play the game. So make sure before you pick your level to go to this website called the Geometry-Demon Ladder. This is a site that ranks every demon based on people's enjoyment ratings. Search for the level you think you want to do and make sure its enjoyment rating is over 5 out of 10, just so you know that the level you're playing is definitely going to actually be fun. And also, if you played the level enough to know if you think it's going to be fun or not for you, then you can just play the level and learn it like that as well. But that site is useful if you just haven't fully learned the level yet and you want to know before going into it how enjoyable it is. Now, the next thing I'm gonna say, you can skip if you want, but I think it's useful to think about, and it's that I don't recommend playing levels with gimmicks. Gimmicks are basically just gameplay in a level that's out of the norm and requires you to learn it pretty well. Stuff like swing copter, cube copter, and double clicks I would personally consider gimmicks for a level. These are things you probably have not played much of or just not played at all at this point. And I want to tell you, try not to pick these levels, because sure, it will help you improve by beating levels with these gimmicks, but the problem is you're only really going to see stuff like double clicks and cube copters, ball copters, stuff like that. Ball copters, swing copters. You're only gonna see these in really high skill range that you're currently not at. So you'll basically never see a swing copter that's longer than 1 second in the levels you're playing now. In fact, that kind of goes for even the higher levels as well. Usually, swing copters, they don't last long, and you rarely see them. And that can go for any of the gimmicks that are in GD. So learning these gimmicks is really not going to help you improve much at all, so it's why I recommend you to play levels without them. But if you really want to play levels that have something like a swing copter, go ahead, I'm not stopping you. You will get better at them, and at the end of the day, you're improving. Now, we need to talk about how good your device is. If you're playing on something that can't play on a high frame rate, or is just very laggy when playing GD, I advise you to play levels from early 2.0 and earlier. This is so you have a smooth playing experience with a level, and it's not lagging you out a ton. But another way to get around this problem is literally just playing your level fully in practice mode, and seeing how it plays for you. If there are no problems with your device with running the level, you're good to go. Also, reason I said early 2.0 and 1.9 levels is people had very bad devices around that time period in GD, so all the levels that were built in that time period were made for lower kind of devices, which is why I think it would be perfect if you just don't have the top range high notch devices. I think that's a good thing to think about. Now we need to talk about decoration. If you're not bothered with how good a level looks, then this won't really apply to you, but if you don't like playing levels with bad decoration, I would just stick to playing 2.1 and 2.2 levels, as they usually have good decoration, even with today's standards. I think early 2.1 levels look fine, but I would recommend you try some levels that might be a bit out of your comfort zone with bad decoration, or maybe just decoration that blocks your screen, as a lot of levels with subpar decoration have great gameplay that improves your skill a lot. Now lastly, this one is really important. Do not play levels that have one skill set in them. By playing levels like 9 circles or just full-on memory levels, you are only improving at one skill set. So when you try and do extremes that are harder, you're going to have a really hard time, as you're not used to stuff like ship and ball gameplay at a high level of difficulty. I only recommend doing one skill set levels if you know you struggle at one specific game mode and you want to improve at it. You've probably heard people like Aeon talk about this, or other people will say this in their tutorials, but I want to include it in mine because there's a reason they're saying it. It is a very important thing that you need to keep in mind when finding a level to play. And if your level is still meeting those requirements, I think you are free to go ahead and play that level. Now obviously, you can play extremes that don't tick one or two of the boxes, but this is just my recommendation. If you want to find a level that will help you improve and be a fun experience to play, I think what I've said will help you a lot. Now, this is not saying that you will 100% enjoy playing your level, because at the end of the day, extremes are the hardest difficulty, and no matter how good a level is, you will get frustrated with some just due to the difficulty, or just having an unlucky experience. You can't really do anything about that. But if you really want to improve, then you're just gonna have to get through that and push on, because a majority of the top players have just really good perseverance, and they can just throw thousands of attempts like it's nothing and have a really high attempt count. If you want to get good, you're just gonna have to be able to do that, because I can't really say anything else. That's all I have for today's video. I haven't really made a guide like this before, so I don't know how this went, or if this is a good video at all. But you know, if this ends up doing well, if it gets like 100 views or something, I might make a series out of it. Because having guides for people for starting the game to be in list levels sounds like a kind of fun thing to do, just having a bunch of videos that will help a player from start to finish. But anyways, consider subscribing if you enjoyed, and yeah, Peace.